Welcome, everybody, to the Smart Biz Advisors podcast. This is where we explore the world of entrepreneurship and help your small business navigate the journey to success. My name is John Jones. I am a digital marketer, a web designer, and a brand developer. I'm joined by Mr. Mark Fackrell, who is a business professional that has more than 20 years experience helping folks manage their businesses. In today's discussion, we're going to dive into the topic of knowing exactly when to transition from your day job into full-time entrepreneurship. Welcome, Mark. Good morning to you.
Good morning, John. It's always nice to chat with you. I'm joining today from my patio in lovely Tallahassee, Florida.
Looks beautiful. Great place to be. All right. So uh, each of us has their own journey and will have a variety of experiences as they build their small business. You know from personal experience what happened to me as I developed my businesses with establishing forming our company. Remember, that was the topic from last week. So there are a lot of challenges when you've invented something. You have a widget, you have a new service, you've got customers, you're serving them, you've got income, you've got all kinds of things to think about. What are some of the main factors to consider when you are uh, looking to go from your day job, your full-time employment, to your new entrepreneurship, your new entrepreneurial venture?
That's a great question, John. There's lots of things that go into that equation. The biggest thing is probably obviously it's got to generate enough income for you to survive on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So sometimes people get forced into entrepreneurship. Sometimes it's a choice. It's scary though when you're in the situation of I'm getting a regular paycheck every 2 weeks to I'm going out on my own and I've got to generate my own paychecks. So there's quite a few factors that you want to take into account. I mean, the biggest one, you want to build up some cash reserves, right? Because the reality of being your own boss and being an entrepreneur is there's going to be good times and there's going to be slow times. So you've got to be able to weather the slow times, right? Which means that when you've got the good times coming in, you gotta stack up some cash to get through them. And really, when you start that journey, that's probably one of your biggest things is, have some money on hand so that you can live, so that, if your big account drops off the face of the earth, you can still survive and you don't have to go back and, beg your old boss for a job. That's probably the ideal situation when you want to transfer from or transition from being an employee of somebody else to working for yourself. Sometimes we don't have that luxury, right? Sometimes we, lose a job or, have turmoil in our lives that force us down that road. I think that's probably how a lot of entrepreneurs get down the path that they're on. And in that case, you just kind of have to, I would refer back to some of the side hustle things that we talked about on our last episode to bring in additional income streams. But ideally,
Exactly.
it's a well thought out and planned situation. And part of that goes hand in hand with one of the things that we talked about in one of the other episodes, and that is budgeting, figuring out how much money you're going to need, right?
Great. Yeah, this is starting to really take shape and demonstrates how it's kind of hand in glove. All of these topics really kind of dovetail out into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so if you know one, yeah, it definitely helps you in another area. So number one is financial security. You're saying,
Yep.
you've got to have something there, whether it be a nest egg, whether it be income from your main work, your main job. Maybe it's your partner. I don't know. Um, Potentially, it's you've got some income from selling your widget selling your surface. So that's probably something. What are some of the others? What are some of the others that will help you evaluate whether or not it's a good idea to go from, your quit your job and go into full-time hustle, small business hustle?
So that's a great question. So, I mean, it really kind of comes down to a matter of, having a good business plan. Again, a business plan that is a living and breathing document that is, some approximation of reality. Obviously, we can't, any of us, pick out the crystal ball and see what's going to happen for sure. But you've got to have some degree of certainty that what you're doing is going to be sustainable and it's going to last, right? I mean, there are plenty of situations where you can go start a business and it's a short-lived thing and you can make some money, and that's all well and good, but it's got to be able to keep going and it's got to be sustainable. So you've got to evaluate the market, right? You've got to evaluate the market. You've got to have that level of comfort that this is something that you're going to be able to continue doing.
Yeah, so I think that is like growth prospects. So you probably need to have some kind of grasp on what your likely near, mid, and long-term income looks like.
Yep.
So maybe if you have experienced some kind of strong growth in the beginning, that might be some kind of indication that you can rely on that to continue.
That's exactly right. And you've got to have a comprehensive plan, right? I mean, it's not like, if I start this thing and I've got one good customer, I would absolutely not recommend somebody make a leap based on one customer.
Yeah, even if it's this one customer is giving them a lot of money, right?
Exactly, because that could very easily go away. That could very easily go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if we can come up with any kind of benchmarks. So, you've said two things, financial security, growth prospects. These are kind of similar. Is there any kind of rule of thumb or benchmark that we can at least touch on or discuss? I mean, should someone have 2 months backup, or should they have X dollars or anything like that? What do you think?
Every business is different, so it's really hard to come up with a rule of thumb for something like this. But I mean, it's going to be a personal decision for each individual person, right? There's your own personal tolerance for risk. I would say you would want to have, several months worth of, good, solid business prospects. I mean, I would say 6 to 12 months. You should be able to look out 6 to 12 months and say, this business that I'm doing is going to be able to generate enough income for me to live on, or I've got enough money stockpiled to live on for 6 to 12 months. And a lot of things can change in that period of time, right? I mean, and hopefully they're all positive things, and that will allow to continued growth and continued success, and then it will go from there. But I would not undertake something like this unless you had a pretty good, comfort level that you can go for at least that long. The longer, the better, Robert, right? Obviously. I mean, you want to have certainly not a single customer, unless you have, a contract signed with them that goes for some period into the future. That would possibly be an exception to what I'm talking about. If you've got a year-long contract with a very large customer that would generate a lot of money, that would be an exception. And then it gives you the opportunity to go out and grow the business during that period of time.
Okay. So those are all good points and worth considering. Now, what is the role of time and time investment? For example, I mean, does it matter if you can do your side hustle in 1 hour a day or 5 hours a day? Or, I mean, at what point, if you are consumed by it, if you find that it is demanding your attention, or doesn't, what kind of benchmark can you sort of place there? I mean, just how much time it takes matter?
It certainly matters, and anybody who's doing a side hustle understands how much time it takes to, to grow a business, right? And when you get to the point where you're focusing on it full time, it's just going to take more, and it's always going to take more than you anticipate that it will, right? So, if you've got something that you're only spending a couple of hours a week on and it's generating money, then yeah, maybe you should just keep spending a couple hours a week on it.
Okay. Yeah. I'm wondering if there is some kind of calculus there. If, for example, your new small business can produce 1/4 of your the salary of your main job, or if it could creates $1,000, but that only takes 2 hours a week. Do you think that there are any kind of hard and fast uh, formulas for this kind of thing?
So, it's interesting. You can't really apply too many hard and fast formulas to any of this stuff that we do. There's so much that is subjective about what it is that we talk about. But I mean, really what you got to do, I think this is what the most important thing is you've got to make a decision, and you've got to weigh, if I spend an hour working on this business, how much can I generate? And then you also have to say, is that a direct ratio? If I spend 10 hours, will I make 10 times as much?
Yeah.
Or is there not enough stuff for me to do for 10 hours, right? Because if there's not enough stuff for you to do for 10 hours, then it's likely not going to be something that you would want to quit your job for. But if it is a direct relationship that says, if I work 10 times as much, I'm going to be able to generate 10 times as much revenue. Or if I work 100 times as much, I'm going to be able to generate 100 times as much revenue. Then that seems kind of like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, all right. So what about, let's, shift gears. So what about personal fulfillment? Sort of how important is it for entrepreneurs to feel fulfilled at their work? Like how much emphasis or impact or influence does that have? I mean, does it matter if it's their passion and their fondest desire and their wish, as opposed to being doing something rote and sort of boring? Does personal fulfillment play into it?
I mean, I think personal fulfillment probably is the single biggest factor. I mean, the reality is that if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're not going to do that good of a job at it, even if you're getting paid a shit ton of money. I mean, you're just doing it for the money at that point. But if you're doing it because it's something that you enjoy and something that you love and something that you get fulfillment out of, you're going to put everything that you can into it, right? And I think ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, if you can do something that you love doing and that you enjoy and have that be a way of making money, that's where true success happens, right?
Good. Yeah, I think that also makes a lot of sense. And it just reminds me of a story I had seen on the internet, Reddit, in fact, in the small business subreddit. So I'm also checking out what other entrepreneurs are saying, what other small businesses are saying and doing there. And one gentleman had come and complained about, being unfulfilled. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. He wanted to run his own business and did end up doing that. But in the end, he discovered that he was he didn't like the stress of being the only one to worry about the bills and being the one to turn off the lights at the end of the day and go home, and so he found that sometimes he was consumed, even in his private life or on the weekend, consumed by thoughts of his business. So I think that's kind of a good caveat or a side note to make, is that, you may have created something very interesting and lucrative, but, once you take it on, even if it is creating enough salary or income uh, to cover your expenses, or more than your main job, you definitely need to do some kind of soul searching and see if that's right for you.
So that's an excellent point that you make there, John. I
You
mean,
know,
you really need to have a come to Jesus conversation with yourself when you are getting ready to make this, because there is a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of things that, you may not like doing. You may not like having all that responsibility. You may not like having to rely upon yourself to generate your own paycheck. I mean, there's a lot of security that comes along with just having a job, and there's a lot of,
yeah,
to your point, there's a lot less stress if you just go in and get your paycheck and you have somebody else cover your insurance and pay your taxes for you and do all that stuff. So there are certainly a lot of challenges that go along with being in business for yourself that don't happen when you just work for somebody else. And you need to seriously consider those things. And you need to, am I willing to take this on? I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of reward in it. And I would never in a million years go back to work for anybody else. But there's definitely a lot more stress in working for yourself than there is working for somebody else.
Yeah.
But you know what it does? It gives you freedom. It allows me to be sitting here on my porch at, 10 o'clock in the morning, not sitting in an office somewhere. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel that totally. I also have chosen to, be self-employed, work for myself. And yeah, I do feel stress at times, but I also really, really appreciate the freedom of making my own decisions, having no one else influence me, and being able to decide what's important now or later. I do feel in the little anecdote that I just mentioned, I can see myself on the weekend worrying, being worrisome about something, whereas someone who was just relying on a 9 to 5, job at a company, so to speak, would not have. So there is a real, sort of balance there. So that's important to consider.
It is important to consider. And here's just one final thing that I'd like to say on that subject. I mean, it's all about the freedom for me. That's why I did this.
Yeah.
People look at a W-2 job and they're like, there's security there. And I would tell you that is a perceived security, because the reality is just because you have a job, that company could go out of business tomorrow. That company could get a new CEO tomorrow and lay you off. There is not security in working for someone else. It is a perceived security. And you're going to worry about stuff there. You're going to worry about the lady down the, cubicle that's, trying to get rid of your job. You're going to be worrying about all sorts of things.
Downsizing,
so it's a matter of
pay cuts, or will I get a raise, or,
exactly. So there's worries in every situation that you are in life. So you got to pick what it is that you want to worry about. I personally would rather worry about something that I at least have control over my own destiny.
Yeah, I agree. So this kind of segues into another related sort of element of this discussion, and that is, can a support system, can your partner, can your friends, can your family, can your community offer you anything in this journey? Can you leverage them for anything? Do they play a role? What is your opinion of that? How can a support system?
I mean, a support system is extremely helpful, if for nothing from an emotional aspect of it, because I mean, it takes a ton of work and it takes a ton of effort and blood and sweat and tears to do this. So if you have a spouse or a partner that is supportive of you, that could very well be the difference between, making it and breaking it. That's probably the most important part of it, because that's the most, closest person to your life. If you've got, friends and family that are supportive, that's going to be good. I think that the biggest, the most important part of that, though, is having a professional network that is supportive of it. So you want to go out and build your professional network and have as many people as you can that are supporting you. And, and be careful about the people that you put around you, right? I mean, you don't want people around you that are going to tell you how it doesn't work. You don't want those people. You can say, thank you very much for your input, and I'll take that into consideration.
Right. It goes both ways.
But don't hang around that people that are going to just sit and, talk about how it's not going to work. I mean, you should obviously listen to, wise counsel from people and, consider, if they have a logical argument as to why you should maybe reconsider what you're doing. I mean, listen to that, right? But don't surround yourself by those people. Surround yourself by supportive people. And especially after you've made the decision to go ahead and do it, you've got to have those positive, supportive ears or voices in your ear, not the naysayers.
Yeah. And again, I love how our discussions are just kind of playing into one another. I mean, we talked last week how, being dynamic, being outgoing, seeking new networks of people, attending, your local Lions Club or Kiwanis or, whatever it is, find a meetup online. Some people that might be interested in your business, your widget, your service, those things can be really helpful in a lot of ways. So
they can be helpful in so many ways, and it's beyond just their knowledge. I mean, you might get introduced to somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody that might be a customer of yours.
Yes.
And I mean, there's a million different things that networking is helpful for.
Yeah. So part of this decision is definitely your network and its role in your life. So, okay, one sort of final pillar of the discussion is, an exit plan. So before, leaving your job, right, and saying goodbye to cushy, a paycheck and all the benefits and stuff like that, do you have to have a defined idea of what the result will be? How does an exit plan, how much does an exit plan play into this decision?
It plays into it extensively, because I mean, the reality, and this kind of goes back to what we started talking about in the first place. I mean, this is obviously, there's a lifestyle aspect of this that's hugely important, but the reason that the reason most of us work is because we got to pay the bills. So you've got to have a plan that's going to, demonstrate to your own personal satisfaction how it's going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I just, one thing I would like to sort of add to it is just that, it's not just what you're going to do, especially immediate term with your immediate income, but it's also probably considering milestones. So when you sell your 1,000th widget, or when you get your 100th recurring paying customer or something, what are you going to do next year? What's your 3-year plan? Where are you going to develop? What are the new functions or new mechanisms? So there's a whole plan.
It is absolutely a whole plan, and it's all about leveraging your past successes to generate new ones, right?
So using all of your tools, your experience, your skills, your money, your relationships, and to achieve your goal. So, all right. So, as we wrap up, do you have any other final tips or pieces of advice for the aspiring entrepreneur who's considering a transition from their day job to a full-time entrepreneurship, small business?
I mean, it really boils down to a few things. You've got to make sure it's something you want to do, right? It's got to be something that you're going to be happy doing for 3, 5, 10 years. You've got to be comfortable that it's going to be something that you're going to be happy doing. It's got to be something that's going to be able to pay your bills. And, it's scary. It's super scary. So at some point you just got to make the decision. I'm going to take the leap, right? And I would personally say that if you're the kind of person that is interested in doing this sort of thing, and you think you've got the chops for it, then you should take that leap. and not sit around and wait for the perfect time, because the perfect time never comes.
Yeah, that's for sure. There is definitely, yeah, one thing we can say for sure. There's nothing, there's no such thing as the perfect time.
Nope.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you sharing your insights on this very important topic. We know a lot of people out there are facing this kind of decision, probably feel alone, probably feel fear. So
Yep.
if we can offer any kind of insight into that, that's really important and helpful. And, uh, I'd like to say to everyone, join us next time as we continue to discuss all these really interesting and important topics in entrepreneurship. And until then, I'd like to, encourage everybody to dream big and go for their goals.
Absolutely.
So thanks, Mark. So with that, we'll see you guys next time.